Let's just be friends, she declared, her eyes unwavering. That statement, delivered exactly 18 months into what I believed was a committed partnership, contained enough misplaced audacity to power a small city. I calmly agreed, a single nod concealing the seismic shift happening in my future planning. That decision, made over a dining table presentation, should tell you everything you need to know about where the story is headed. But the real lesson isn't in the ending. It's in the spectacular misunderstanding of what a simple word like friendship actually means. Looking back, the red flags were less like subtle warnings and more like neon signs flashing in the Parisian night. But when you're 31, operating a successful boutique digital marketing agency in London's Shoreditch, making enough to afford a beautifully renovated Georgian flat near Borough Market, you often choose optimism over reality. I'm Raiden Miller, an obsessive planner who finds comfort in measurable outcomes, color-coded project timelines, and a meticulously organized financial portfolio. My idea of a thrilling Friday night involves closing a new international client deal and optimizing my investment strategy. I appreciate stability, structure, and things that operate precisely as designed. Anya was the beautiful, unpredictable variable I had inserted into my perfectly managed equation. At 25, she worked as a junior fashion buyer for a luxury department store in Covent Garden, pulling in an impressive salary, but maintaining a lifestyle that demanded a bottomless trust fund. She possessed a curated online presence, constantly documenting her inspiration hunts and perfectly styled flat whites for 4,000 engaged followers. She had an infectious, high-energy charm that made you believe her latest must-have designer bag was a critical investment, and her financial situation would resolve itself through sheer optimism. She moved into my $850,000 flat after a year. For the next 6 months, she contributed $500 monthly toward shared living costs, while I handled the substantial mortgage, council tax, utilities, and a gourmet food budget that seemed entirely dedicated to her social media content. Her contribution covered roughly what the high-speed fiber broadband and premium cable package cost. I justified it by telling myself she was focused on her career growth, that my stability was a base of support, and that this was the natural equilibrium of a committed relationship. The separation arrived not with an emotional storm, but with the sterile, organized efficiency of a business review. It was a crisp Wednesday evening in late April. I'd returned from a high-stakes pitch meeting, expecting the usual relaxed evening. Instead, Anya was seated at my antique dining table, her laptop open, casting a cool blue light on a title slide that read, "Relationship Pivot, a Sustainable Path Forward." "We need to discuss our future, Raiden," she announced, using the formal, measured tone she reserved for demanding raises. "I've synthesized my thoughts on our dynamic, and I believe it's time to evolve our arrangement into something mutually beneficial." I sat across from her, momentarily stunned. A presentation? To break up? She clicked the slide forward. Bullet points appeared. Growth opportunities, mutual autonomy, sustainable connection. "I think we're better as friends, Raiden," she continued, gesturing with a sleek stylus. "We've built a beautiful connection, but I need the space to explore my individual potential. We've become comfortable, and comfort is the enemy of personal evolution." The sheer irony of someone who had spent 6 months contributing a fraction of the cost of their high-end living space lecturing me on personal evolution was almost breathtaking. But I waited, genuinely curious about the next slide. It was titled, "Proposed Platonic Partnership." What I propose is a platonic living arrangement where we maintain our foundation, Anya stated, her voice even. I could continue contributing to the household while using this space as a secure, familiar base during this transitional period of self-discovery. There it was. She wanted to end the relationship, but keep the highly subsidized luxury flat, all while presumably exploring other romantic options under the guise of personal growth. So, you want to break up with me, I clarified, but keep paying $500 a month to live in my flat? Her practiced confidence wavered. It's not breaking up, Raiden. It's maturing the relationship. We're excellent friends. We should focus on that genuine connection instead of forcing a romantic structure that has clearly run its course. When did it run its course? Our intimacy has been low for 2 months, she said, clicking to a chart tracking our relationship activity. And our conversations are superficial. We work, we socialize separately, we sleep. We're essentially high-end flatmates. She wasn't wrong about the distance, but she conveniently omitted the frequent late nights out and the vaguely evasive answers about who she'd been networking with. The superficial conversation issue stemmed mainly from her answering my questions about her day with a single distracted word while scrolling through social media. And you believe being friends will resolve that? I think being honest about what we are will resolve it, she insisted. We care for each other, but we're no longer in love. We're just convenient. And convenience is a cage. I looked at the presentation, the bullet points, and the rehearsed justification. This wasn't about growth. It was about maintaining a desirable lifestyle while jettisoning the emotional, physical, and financial commitments required to sustain me as a partner. You know what, Anya? You are absolutely right. Her eyes widened, clearly anticipating an argument. I am. We should be friends, real friends. The kind that meticulously split all expenses equally, respect each other's defined personal space, and make plans in advance. A slow dawning horror crept into her expression. Exactly. That's precisely the evolved dynamic I'm proposing. Excellent. Then, as your friend, I must point out that friends don't typically live together unless they are splitting the mortgage, council tax, and utilities 50-50. And friends definitely don't have unlimited access to their former partner's premium streaming accounts or driver services. The color drained from her face as the true implications hit her. She tried to backtrack, suggesting a gradual transition, but I was already mentally calculating the significant savings that came with no longer subsidizing her existence. For the first time in months, I felt an exhilarating rush of clarity, completely independent of the woman sitting across from me, whose planned manipulation had just spectacularly backfired. The next morning, I called Marcus, my head of digital strategy and closest friend, a dry-witted man who had watched this relationship from the periphery. She wants to be friends, I explained, recounting the PowerPoint presentation. Marcus laughed, a short, sharp sound. Raiden, she doesn't want friendship. She wants a retained financial sponsor with zero romantic obligation. That's not a friend. That's an unpaid membership to your lifestyle. He was entirely correct. But I was determined to see how far Anya would take this friendship concept before she realized its true cost. Within 48 hours of her dramatically moving out into the small spare room of her acquaintance, Alara, she began testing the newly established boundaries. The first request arrived via text at 8:00 a.m. Urgent situation. No organic almond milk, and I have a crucial meeting at 10. Can you grab the expensive single-source kind I like and drop it off? Emergency. An emergency grocery run for a specialty item she could acquire herself at any of the upscale stores near her new location. I replied 3 hours later. Apologies. Locked in an important client meeting. Hope you found a suitable alternative. Her next message was immediate. Raiden, that was essential for my morning routine. I thought we agreed to support each other as friends. We did agree to be friends, I replied, but essential grocery delivery is a service typically reserved for one's partner, or a very expensive app. Friends usually send a quick, good luck with your meeting message. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before she sent, Fine, can you at least give me the new password for the shared fitness app? I need my routine. I had changed all the shared digital passwords and removed her from my family mobile plan immediately after our discussion. The fitness app now requires an independent subscription for friends, Anya. I believe the premium single user plan is only $19.99 monthly. A worthy investment in your personal evolution. This pattern persisted for 2 weeks. Anya would request a service she'd taken for granted. Access to my car, help moving new furniture, a last-minute ticket to a social event she knew I was attending, and I would respond with the polite, structured distance one affords a casual acquaintance. Friendly, but unaccommodating to the point of clarity. The absolute breaking point came 3 weeks later, when she showed up uninvited to my flat on a Saturday afternoon. I was preparing a selection of complicated canapes for a networking event with my agency's key clients. I heard the lock turn. She had somehow forgotten to return the spare key during her exit. And her voice calling out, "I'm here!" I brought a decent bottle of Sancerre for the evening. Store-bought, of course, but it's from my usual supplier. She walked in and placed the wine on my immaculate marble counter like she still belonged there. Marcus, who was helping me with the setup, exchanged a look with me. "Anya," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "What are you doing here?" "It's Saturday networking prep day. I always come to networking prep day," she declared, rearranging my carefully organized canapes. I thought as friends we could still maintain these traditions. "Friends are invited to events," Marcus interjected, not bothering to look up from arranging glassware. "They don't just use keys to enter private residences." Anya looked genuinely baffled, as if the concept of needing an invitation to a social gathering was a baffling, unnecessary formality. "But we always do this together. It's our dynamic." "It was our dynamic when we were in a relationship," I corrected, my tone crisp. "Now we are friends, and friends respect boundaries. They ask permission before using a key to someone else's home." Her face cycled through confusion, annoyance, and the familiar indignation I recognized from times when her credit card was declined. "So you're saying I'm not welcome at your own client event?" "I'm saying friends call first and wait for an invitation," I replied, like normal, considerate adults do. She stood there holding her Sancerre, finally seeming to grasp the core truth. Breaking up meant losing unrestricted access to my space, my resources, and my exclusive social circle. The event wasn't just about my clients. It was about the community I'd built, the professional standing she'd enjoyed without contributing anything substantive to its maintenance. "This is ridiculous, Raiden. We're adults. We can maintain a sophisticated friendship without these petty rules." Marcus stepped forward, his expression severe. "Lady, you effectively resigned from your partnership, and now you're furious he won't let you keep the full benefits package. That's not a sophisticated friendship. That's trying to retain an expired membership." The analogy was perfect. Anya's face flushed as she finally processed what had been said. "Fine," she hissed, snatching up the wine bottle. "I see where I stand. Thank you for making this abundantly clear." She stormed out, slamming the antique door hard enough to rattle the window panes, leaving the forgotten spare key on the mat in her furious departure. She genuinely thought she could have the luxury flat and the single life simultaneously, Marcus observed, loading a tray. How long do you think before she realizes the true extent of what she sacrificed? "Give it another few weeks," I said, watching through the window as Anya stood on the pavement, likely trying to formulate the perfect victim narrative for social media. Real friendship is about to become a crash course in consequence management for her. Marcus was correct about the timeline, but even he underestimated the sheer scale of Anya's entitlement. Despite her dramatic exit and the symbolic return of the spare key, she quickly convinced herself that our friendship somehow still included special, non-reciprocal access to my life. The boundary violations started small, but quickly escalated from mere inconvenience to outright social sabotage. The most spectacular incident occurred during my agency's quarterly client appreciation dinner, an exclusive event I hosted to strengthen relationships with my most valuable contracts. I had spent the afternoon ensuring every detail was perfect, the wine pairing, the catering, the seating plan, everything designed to convey professional excellence. I was explaining the new Q2 strategy to a major fintech CEO when Anya appeared, unannounced and uninvited, walking into the private dining room of a high-end restaurant near St. Paul's Cathedral. She was wearing an expensive new designer dress and carrying a bottle of champagne, acting as if she had simply arrived late. "Apologies, everyone. Traffic was absolutely dreadful coming from Mayfair," she announced to the table of confused executives. My key client, Mr. Harrison, a straight-laced investment firm partner who had met Anya once during a casual brunch, looked at me, a clear question in his eyes. "Raiden, I thought you two—" "We are friends, Mr. Harrison," Anya interjected smoothly, flashing a bright, practiced smile. "Raiden and I realized we function much better as friends, so we've maintained all the wonderful parts of our connection without the unnecessary complications." The entire table fell into immediate, uncomfortable silence. These were high-powered individuals who understood professional conduct. Anya's uninvited appearance at a sensitive client dinner was setting off every professional alarm bell. She immediately took over the role of co-host for an event she wasn't invited to. She directed the sommelier, explained my agency's success to guests as if she were a vital part of the operation, and repeatedly inserted herself into conversations about market trends she knew nothing about. When the fintech CEO complimented the strategy, Anya jumped in with, "We've been refining that approach for weeks, using the plural pronoun with breathtaking confidence." Marcus arrived shortly after, took one look at the situation, and immediately understood the magnitude of the invasion. He made his way over to me, while Anya was busy telling a senior executive how their investment firm needed to improve their social media narrative. "She is literally crashing your most important professional function, acting like your partner," Marcus whispered, his eyes narrowed. "This is beyond inappropriate. This is an active professional threat." "I know," I muttered. "I'm trying to find a solution that doesn't involve a scene in front of my primary revenue stream." "Allow me," Marcus said, the authority of his professional dry wit kicking in. "I speak fluent boundary enforcement." He walked over to Anya, who was holding court. "Anya, could I have a quick word?" His tone was polite but steel-edged. "Of course, Marcus. I was just detailing my insights on luxury brand positioning for Mr. Thorne. It's fascinating, actually, because—" "I'm sure," Marcus interrupted gently. "Quick question, though. Did Raiden specifically invite you to this client dinner?" The conversation at her end of the table stopped dead. Everyone was listening, sensing the tension. Anya's smile froze. "Well, it's complex. We're friends, and I always attend Raiden's high-profile events. It's an unspoken tradition. But did he issue you a formal invitation for this specific corporate event?" Her confidence began to visibly crumble. "Not exactly, but friends don't need formal invitations for—" "Actually, they do," Marcus stated, his voice carrying clearly across the table. "Friends need invitations. Acquaintances need invitations. You absolutely cannot simply arrive at someone's professional client event because you once dated the host. That's not tradition. That's a breach of professional conduct." The silence that followed was suffocating. My clients were watching, their expressions a mix of secondhand embarrassment and intellectual fascination. "Raiden," Anya said, her voice rising slightly in a manufactured pitch of victimhood. "Are you going to let him talk to me like this?" This was the pivotal moment. My response would define my professionalism and the credibility of my boundaries. My entire client list was watching to see if I would enforce my own rules. "Marcus is correct, Anya," I said, my voice measured and calm. "This is a private, client-only engagement. Showing up uninvited and attempting to co-host is inappropriate. You are placing me in a deeply unprofessional position." Her face turned a deep crimson. The indignation I had seen countless times was back, but this time it was laced with real panic. "This is unbelievably petty and cruel. I thought you were mature enough to maintain a sophisticated friendship. You're just too insecure to let me around your precious clients." She grabbed her handbag and the expensive wine bottle she'd brought, stopping at the table's edge for her parting shot. Maybe when you learn how to treat people with basic respect, we can try this friendship again. She marched out, leaving the private room in stunned silence. Mr. Harrison broke the tension first. Well, Raiden, he said dryly, that was certainly a demonstration of boundaries. Anyone for a second glass of this excellent Cabernet? The evening quickly returned to normal. Later, when the clients had departed, the restaurant manager approached me. Mr. Miller, I apologize for the intrusion. For what it's worth, you handled a volatile situation with extreme professionalism. The real twist arrived 2 days later when Alara, Anya's acquaintance she had moved in with, knocked on my flat door. Alara Davies was a calm, organized junior architect whom I had only met in passing. She was standing on my doorstep at 7 p.m., looking utterly exhausted after what I assumed was a typical long day of designing building safety plans. Raiden, I am so sorry to bother you, she began, holding a large, high-quality bottle of olive oil, a strange offering. But I need to talk to someone about what happened at your client dinner. I heard about Anya's performance from my firm's partner, and I think you should know a few things about your ex. I invited her in, immediately sensing a crucial shift in the narrative. Alara had always seemed like the sensible, grounded anchor in Anya's orbit. Anya and I are no longer friends, Alara stated, sinking onto my sofa. Haven't been for about a week now, which is exactly how long she lived in my small spare room before I realized what she's actually like as a flatmate. This was new information. What happened? Alara let out a weary laugh. What didn't happen? She moved in with 4 designer suitcases and immediately treated my place like a fully serviced hotel, never cleaned. Used all my expensive skincare products and food without asking. Had loud late-night video calls and complained constantly about the lack of ambiance in my simple architect's flat. But the absolute breaking point was the rent. The rent? The familiar note of financial evasion. She promised $800 a month for half of everything. Fair split, Alara explained. In 6 days, she paid exactly 0, then had the audacity to suggest that $800 was unrealistic for her current financial bracket, and I should be more understanding because she had big expenses coming up. I was well acquainted with this strategy. Anya's solution to financial reality was to manipulate others into lowering their expectations or covering the difference. And what did she say about me? I asked, my stomach tightening. According to Anya, you were a boring, controlling corporate accountant who was jealous of her social life and tried to trap her with money. She painted this picture of you as a possessive tyrant who monitored her spending and demanded an accounting for every penny. The absurdity was shocking. I had done the opposite. I had been too hands-off, too willing to cover her costs without question. She also had some colorful things to say about me, Alara added, a wry smile touching her lips. Apparently, I'm unambitious and stuck in a dead-end job because I chose the stable work of urban planning and architecture over something more glamorous, like luxury buying. I stared at Alara, a woman who literally designed the structures that kept the city safe, being criticized by someone whose major achievement was posting curated coffee photos. Alara, that's insane. Your work is substantial. You build things that last. Thank you. That means more than you know, especially after listening to her trash you and me for 3 weeks. We talked for another hour. Alara was insightful, refreshingly grounded, and possessed a quiet focus that was the antithesis of Anya's performative chaos. When I offered to order food, she insisted on splitting the bill and then, without prompting, began stacking the dishes. The contrast with Anya was stark. Can I ask you something? Alara said as we finished tidying up. Would you want to get dinner sometime? Like a proper dinner. Not a therapy session on your couch about our awful ex-flatmate. The attraction was immediate and undeniable. But I had to ask, won't this be incredibly complicated? The best friend/flatmate situation. Anya stopped being my friend the moment she decided my home, my resources, and my financial stability were hers for the taking, Alara said, her eyes meeting mine with resolute clarity. She made her choice to burn that bridge. I'm not going to let her poor decisions limit my good ones. Besides, she added, after hearing her venomous descriptions of you, I'm rather curious to see what the real Raiden Miller's like when he's not being described by someone who clearly didn't appreciate what she had. Our first actual date was that Friday at a fantastic, mid-range Maltese restaurant she had suggested. She was precisely on time. The conversation was genuine, focused on our work, our passions, and our futures. When the bill arrived, she reached for her wallet before I could move. When I suggested we split it, she gave me a genuine, open smile. Finally, she said, someone who doesn't think buying me a dinner entitles them to my future. The difference was night and day. Alara asked about my complex security systems because she was genuinely fascinated by structure. She talked about her projects with the passion of someone who finds true purpose in their career. Anya said you were boring, Alara told me over dessert. She specifically mentioned that you work too much and don't understand how to relax. I think a man who builds a successful agency and manages a meticulous investment portfolio has a pretty interesting definition of stability, I countered. Anya's idea of excitement was spending money she hadn't earned on things she didn't need. By the end of the evening, I was more captivated by Alara than I had been by anyone in years. She was beautiful, but more importantly, she was substantial. She had depth, purpose, and a quiet, refreshing integrity. When I walked her to her cab, she turned and said, I had a wonderful time. I'd absolutely love to do this again, even though it will undoubtedly complicate things for Anya. Anya can deal with her consequences, I replied. She chose to be friends. This is simply the logical conclusion of that dynamic. That night, lying in my own bed, in my own flat, next to no one, I realized the core truth. I was genuinely excited about my life's trajectory, and it had everything to do with the woman who just texted me, thank you for a lovely evening, sleep well, and absolutely nothing to do with the one who had created a PowerPoint to explain why we should be just friends. Anya discovered that Alara and I were dating exactly 10 days later, and her reaction made the client dinner boundary violation look like a minor misunderstanding about seating charts. The precise timing is etched in my memory because my phone began its digital explosion at 5 o'clock a.m. on a Thursday morning, with a relentless barrage of texts that rapidly escalated from confused inquiry to unhinged fury over the span of 51 minutes. The first message was almost rational. Did Marcus really tell me you and Alara went to that Maltese place? Before I could process that, the follow-up arrived. Please tell me this isn't some pathetic, desperate revenge plot against me. By 5:20 a.m., the messages were arriving in rapid succession. You are dating my acquaintance. How could you be so cruel? This is twisted. You're only doing this to hurt me. Alara knows exactly what she's doing. This is betrayal on a massive scale. I can't believe you'd stoop this low. You're both completely horrible people. This is psychological warfare. Answer your phone right now. I counted 29 frantic, accusatory text messages before 6 o'clock a.m. while calmly brewing my specialty coffee. I marveled at the sheer level of self-absorption required to send nearly 36 angry communications about an ex-partner's dating life 2 weeks after formally ending the relationship via a PowerPoint presentation. The phone call started at 6:30 a.m. and continued every 5 to 10 minutes until I left for a crucial meeting. 16 attempted calls in 90 minutes. Each one went straight to voicemail, as I had zero intention of starting my day with the emotional hurricane Anya was manufacturing. I listened to the voicemails during my late lunch. They were precisely what one would expect from a person losing all control over a situation they had engineered. The messages swung wildly between tearful pleas to end this betrayal and furious threats to expose my true character to everyone we knew. One particularly bizarre message accused me of stealing her acquaintance as payback for wanting to be just friends, conveniently forgetting that the entire concept had been her professional suggestion. By the evening, her social media had transformed into a passive-aggressive wasteland. Post after post of dramatic, inspirational quotes about narcissistic men, fake friends, and learning to recognize manipulative behavior. One post, set over a heavily filtered photo of her looking dramatically into the distance, read, "Some people will use your own social circle against you when their ego is bruised. Stay strong, beautiful souls." The caption was a thinly veiled indictment of me and Alara. Meanwhile, Alara and I were quietly building something genuine. She had started staying at my flat over the weekends, and the difference in the atmosphere was extraordinary. She contributed to groceries without being asked, helped with household management out of a sense of shared responsibility, and treated my space with the innate respect that comes from true consideration. When she used the kitchen, she cleaned up after herself. When we watched a series, she genuinely asked for my preference instead of automatically queuing up a reality show. "Has she always been this dramatic?" Alara asked one Saturday morning while preparing us a substantial English breakfast. A proper breakfast, not an Instagram smoothie bowl that requires specialty ingredients from 3 continents. "I think the drama is directly proportional to her loss of control," I admitted, watching her expertly flip eggs. "She's acting like I personally destroyed her life by agreeing to the terms of friendship that she proposed." Alara served the plate. "She's not heartbroken about losing you, Raiden. She's furious about losing the comfort and convenience you provided. There is a profound difference." The insight was precise. Anya was not grieving the loss of a partner. She was raging over the collapse of her meticulously crafted safety net. The harassment escalated throughout the following week. More angry texts came from burner numbers after I blocked the old one. The social media posts became increasingly explicit in their targeting. According to Marcus, she had started showing up at places she knew I frequented, apparently hoping to catch me with Alara and orchestrate a public scene. "She came into my Shoreditch pub last night," Marcus reported during our weekly catch-up. "Asked the bartender if I knew whether you still went to the Soho House. When they politely refused to give out information, she tried to convince them she was your cousin and needed to find you for an urgent family matter. The desperation is impressive." Anya's choice to lie about a family emergency to track my whereabouts was clearly crossing the line from standard breakup behavior into genuine concern territory. Alara handled the entire situation with the quiet fortitude of someone accustomed to dealing with real structural emergencies. "I've seen enough real crises in my job to know the difference between someone having a hard time and someone who's just being difficult," she told me. "Anya is struggling to accept that actions have consequences." However, even Alara's considerable patience was tested when Anya started targeting her directly. The messages to Alara were different, more manipulative, focused on guilt, loyalty, and betrayal, rather than outright anger. "She's trying to convince me that you're just using me as part of a grand psychological revenge scheme." Alara showed me the screenshots one evening. "Apparently, you're incapable of genuine emotion, and this is all an elaborate plan to make her jealous." The messages painted me as a master manipulator who had identified Alara's vulnerabilities and was exploiting them for the sheer pleasure of psychological warfare. According to Anya, I was targeting Alara specifically because it was the one thing that would truly hurt her. "Do you think there's any truth to this being some revenge scheme?" Alara asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "If I were planning a grand revenge scheme against Anya," I said, a faint smile touching my lips, "I probably wouldn't have started by covering 90% of her living costs for 6 months while she called me her financial fallback. Revenge, by my standards, is usually far more financially efficient." Alara laughed, but then her expression grew serious. "She really did a number on your self-esteem, didn't she? The way you second-guess yourself, like you can't trust your own motivations or feelings." She was right. Living with someone who constantly reframed my stability as control and my generosity as manipulation had eroded my trust in my own character. But being with Alara was helping me reestablish my personal baseline. I am happy with you because you are a wonderful, rational, and financially responsible person, I told her. Not because I'm trying to hurt anyone else. Anya simply cannot accept that the world doesn't revolve around her drama. That night, as we fell asleep in my own flat, in my own bed, with a woman who wanted to be there for the right reasons, I realized Anya's spectacular meltdown was actually the final required step in my own liberation. Her frantic reaction to losing control was revealing in glaring detail exactly why she had never deserved it in the first place. The financial collapse that followed Anya's exit was not only swift and brutal, but perfectly predictable. Without my extensive subsidies propping up her aspirational lifestyle, Anya's solid but modest buyer salary proved catastrophically insufficient for someone accustomed to living as if she were a global design director. The social media posts that once showcased expensive dinners at the Chiltern Firehouse and new designer shopping bags gradually devolved into vague motivational quotes about temporary setbacks and building character through adversity. Influencer code for, "My life is crumbling, but I must maintain the aesthetic of intentional self-improvement." Marcus was the first to provide definitive evidence of the financial carnage. "Dude, I just saw Anya at the Tesco Metro buying their cheapest instant noodles and own-brand cleaning supplies." He texted me with obvious professional satisfaction. She was meticulously checking the unit price of everything. It was like watching someone discover the fundamental laws of economics for the very first time. The eviction from Ilara's flat had been the first significant domino. After only 2 weeks of broken promises regarding imminent commission checks and temporary cash flow issues, Ilara had issued a clear ultimatum: pay the 800 in back rent and utilities, or vacate the premises. Anya, true to form, chose the dramatic exit, accusing Ilara of being unsupportive and materialistic during a difficult transition. She actually called me materialistic, Ilara reported to me later, genuinely amazed. A woman who spent half her monthly income on branded candles accused an architect of prioritizing money over friendship for wanting her share of the electric bill. With the sensible option of living with Ilara gone, Anya briefly attempted to secure living arrangements with other acquaintances. But her established reputation as a financial liability had preceded her. The social media posts from this time became increasingly desperate. Thinly veiled requests for assistance disguised as motivational content about learning who your real friends are. Then came what Marcus dubbed the sugar lifestyle phase, which he discovered through his network of social contacts who tracked high-end dating apps. Anya had apparently signed up for one of those financially focused arrangement sites and connected with a 60-year-old retired financier willing to fund her lifestyle in exchange for company and discretion. Her Instagram briefly flared back to life with a vengeance. Photos of exclusive rooftop bars in Kensington, new Hermes scarves, and lavish dinners. The captions were dripping with passive-aggressive digs. "Finally found a proper gentleman who understands how to treat a woman and appreciates my worth." "The not-so-subtle targeting of you is obvious to anyone who followed your timeline," Ilara observed, scrolling through Anya's posts. "According to her narrative, she's living her best life with someone who appreciates her properly, implying you didn't." The arrangement lasted exactly 5 weeks before the financier's family discovered the nature of their relationship. The explosion was swift and comprehensive. Anya's social media feed went completely dark overnight. The opulent dinner posts vanished. The inspirational quotes about real men evaporated, and her entire online presence shifted to an eerie silence, punctuated only by vague, non-committal posts about taking a necessary break and toxic situations. Marcus got the full, unvarnished story through a contact who managed a popular cocktail bar in Soho where Anya had taken a job. "She's working at a high-volume cocktail bar now," Marcus reported with obvious satisfaction, wearing the required black uniform. "Sarah, who works there, says she looks utterly miserable, complaining constantly about the minimum wage and the rudeness of the customers." The mental image of Anya, who had complained about showing houses worth under 1.5 million because it was beneath her, now serving overpriced cocktails to tourists, was almost too perfectly ironic. But the final most telling blow came when Alara ran into Anya's mother near the Angel Islington market. Mrs. Davies mentioned that Anya had moved back home. Alara told me that evening, apparently it's not going well. Her mother kept asking how someone with a solid job and a degree could end up in such a profound financial mess. The answer, of course, was simple. Anya had never learned to live within her own means because she had always successfully outsourced her financial responsibility. First to her parents during university, then to a series of enabling boyfriends, then to me for 18 months, and most recently to the ill-fated financier. Her mother seemed genuinely confused about the debt, Alara continued. She mentioned something about maxed-out credit cards and outstanding car payments, and couldn't comprehend how someone earning a decent salary could be so perpetually broke. The transformation of her social media was the most definitive indicator of her downfall. The aspirational lifestyle content was replaced by generic motivational posts about finding new opportunities in hospitality and learning the value of hard work. Her follower count had plummeted from 4,000 to under 700 as her content shifted from unattainable aspiration to depressing reality. "Do you feel bad for her?" Alara asked one evening as we were cooking dinner together. We were making a complicated but affordable Thai curry, meticulously calculating the costs. I paused, considering the question. I feel bad that she never acquired the necessary skills to build a life instead of just funding a lifestyle. But no, I do not feel responsible for the consequences of her choices. The irony was stark. Anya's desperate quest to upgrade her situation had led to the most dramatic downgrade possible. She had traded a stable, supportive relationship with a partner who was genuinely committed to her for a series of increasingly desperate, unsustainable arrangements that had left her worse off than when she had started. She could have had a comfortable, good life, Alara said, stirring the fragrant sauce. She just couldn't appreciate it because she was too busy looking for something more. Meanwhile, my life had improved dramatically. My investment accounts were thriving without the constant financial drain of subsidizing a dual existence. My Georgian flat felt like a stable home again, not a meticulously lit backdrop for someone else's content. And most importantly, I was building a solid, honest future with a woman who valued mutual respect over performance. The desperate midnight phone call arrived exactly 4 months after Anya's relationship pivot presentation. My phone rang at 11:43 p.m. on a Tuesday, jolting me awake next to Alara, who had become a consistent, welcome presence in my flat. The caller ID showed Anya's number, which I had unblocked weeks earlier because the stream of emotional harassment had finally dried up. "Raiden, oh, thank God you answered. I'm so sorry to call this late, but I truly need to talk to someone who actually understands my situation." Her voice was utterly different. It was small, fragile, and utterly defeated, stripped of the entitled, performative confidence that had defined our interactions. This was not the woman who presented a sophisticated breakup via PowerPoint. This was someone genuinely broken by the immediate consequences of her own financial choices. "What is wrong, Anya? Everything is completely falling apart. I am drowning in debt. My car is about to be repossessed, and there are now legal complications from that situation with Gerald." Gerald, apparently, was the retired financier. "His solicitor contacted me last week about potential testimony for his divorce proceedings. And now I'm terrified I'm going to get dragged into court. I have £12,000 in credit card debt. I'm 3 months behind on the car payment, and my mother is threatening to cut off contact if I don't start contributing to the house. I don't know what to do." The figures were staggering, yet completely predictable. A person trying to maintain a luxury lifestyle on a modest salary would inevitably hit rock bottom once all external sources of funding were cut off. "I'm sorry you're experiencing this, Anya. That sounds profoundly stressful. Raiden, I know I have no right to ask this, but I need help. I need someone to help me figure out how to structure a way out of this mess. You were always so good with money, with planning, and seeing solutions to problems I couldn't handle. There it was, the real, underlying reason for the midnight call. Not an apology, not genuine remorse, but another calculated request for me to step back into the role of problem solver and financial safety net. What kind of help are you requesting? Maybe a short-term loan to catch up on the car payments or help negotiating with the credit card companies. You understand how to talk to those financial people in ways I don't. I promise I will pay you back the moment I stabilize. The familiar pattern reemerged even in crisis. Anya's solution to her own financial irresponsibility was to find someone else to provide the financial rescue, coupled with vague future repayment promises that were unlikely to ever materialize. Anya, I will not loan you money. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before she responded, her voice shifting instantly from desperate vulnerability to manipulative accusation. Friends help each other, Raiden. I thought we had moved past all the pettiness and could be there for each other when things got difficult. We did agree to be friends, I said calmly. Do you remember you said friends don't need the complicated romantic stuff, just the good parts of caring about each other? Exactly. So, you understand why I'm calling? I understand perfectly. You want me to provide significant financial provision without any relationship commitment or obligation on your part. But that is not friendship, Anya. That is what we had before, and you specifically said you didn't want it anymore. Her breathing became irregular, the realization that her manipulation was failing, and she had no fallback plan. I made a mistake. Okay, I was wrong about us. I was wrong about what I wanted. I realize now that what we had was special, and I threw it away because I was confused and stupid. What we had, I corrected her gently, was you calling me your financial safety net while strategically planning to leave your job to become a full-time, self-funded lifestyle influencer. I never said that. You literally said exactly that. Those were your exact words in your presentation about evolving our relationship dynamic. The silence was the silence of a person caught in an undeniable recorded contradiction. Raiden, please, I'm begging you. I know I hurt you, but I am truly desperate. I will do anything to make this right between us. You will do anything, I summarized, except take full responsibility for your choices or learn to live within your actual means. The conversation deteriorated into familiar territory. Tears, accusations of cruelty, promises to change, and veiled threats about what she might do if I didn't rescue her. But beneath the hysteria was the same fundamental toxic core. Anya had never learned to solve her own problems, because there had always been someone willing and able to solve them for her. Do you know what the truly sad thing about this call is? I asked finally. You still don't understand why we broke up. You think it was about money or commitment, but it was fundamentally about respect. You never respected me enough to see me as anything more than a resource to be exploited. That is not true. I loved you. You loved what I provided. There is a gigantic difference. I hung up the phone and turned to Alara, who was awake and listening with the professional composure of someone who deals with emergency structural failures. How much of that did you hear? All of it, she replied softly. She really doesn't understand the concept of personal accountability, does she? The next morning, a final text arrived from Anya, confirming how little she had learned. I cannot believe you are being this cruel to me at my absolute lowest point. I guess I know where I stand. Don't expect me to be understanding when Alara finally realizes what kind of manipulative person you really are. Alara read the message over her morning tea and shook her head. Even when she's utterly defeated, she's still trying to exert control through psychological projection. It's almost fascinating. That afternoon, Marcus called with the news that put the final, definitive punctuation mark on Anya's attempt to rebuild her life on other people's resources. Remember that financier situation? Marcus reported. Well, his solicitor got wind of Anya's financial desperation and decided she'd be willing to testify about the affair in exchange for a clean break. The legal pressure was apparently more serious than she let on. The threat of being dragged into a high-profile, messy divorce was enough to force Anya into paying a substantial £5,000 settlement to the financier's family in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, that legally silenced her. 5,000, Marcus repeated with clear satisfaction. That's likely every pound she had left, plus whatever she could scrape from her parents. The NDA also includes social media restrictions, which explains the sudden, total silence. So, Alara summarized later, she's broke, living with her parents, working in a cocktail bar, and legally prohibited from using social media to crowdfund her way out of debt. She created the perfect storm of consequences for herself. 6 months later, Alara and I moved in together officially, combining our lives in a way that was defined by mutual, meticulous planning and respect. She insisted on maintaining her smaller flat as an investment property, not out of distrust, but because she had learned from Anya's downfall that financial independence was a non-negotiable foundation of adulthood. I love what we're building, she told me one evening as we planned our first joint investment into a stable global index fund, a process we split equally. But I never want to be in a position where I need someone else to solve my problems. That's the difference between someone who wants partnership and someone who wants provision. Alara enhanced my life while maintaining her own formidable structure. Anya had attempted to replace her life with mine, and was baffled when that inherently unsustainable arrangement finally collapsed. The last I heard of Anya came through Marcus's pub contact. She had apparently moved to a different, less demanding city, started over somewhere that didn't know her history, and was working in a reputable boutique while sharing a flat with roommates who actually expected her to pay her agreed share of the rent. Whether she had learned the core lesson of self-sufficiency was still an open question. But at least she was finally living within her means, likely for the first time in her adult life. Meanwhile, Alara and I were building the kind of relationship Anya could have had if she had ever understood the profound difference between loving someone and simply using them. Real partnership, shared goals, financial transparency, and the simple adult understanding that a friend is a companion, not a resource. Sometimes, people only truly realize what they have thrown away once it is demonstrably, irrevocably gone.